Well, in 2012, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had a double mastectomy, 14 months of chemo, and 16 surgeries since. And then 1 year and 10 months after my diagnosis, my son Joey was killed in an ATV accident.
My son H was diagnosed with osteosarcoma in 2015. We knew that eventually he would be terminal, but didn't know when he will be terminal.
Patty had suffered almost 8 years, or in excess of 8 years, with breast cancer. The end came very quickly in terms of its acceleration. She was doing great, and then in the last year of her life spread to her lungs, eventually to her brain, to the point where there was nothing clinical or medically or from a treatment perspective that could be done for her. So the decision was made with her family and my children, our children, to seek hospice care.
Being told your 13-year-old is not going to live is not a natural thing, but through Regional Hospice and palliative care, we learned to embrace the time that we had with our daughter. Instead of absolutely dreading every moment, we learned that you're not creating a bucket list. You're not just saying, you're not gonna live. We did the most living we did her entire life in her last 10 months of life. And we just learned to embrace our time with our daughter.
My impression of hospice before we got involved here was that it was an end of life, or pretty much the last stop. And my children and I found that to be completely untrue. This was an extraordinarily positive, warm environment for our family. It became a sanctuary for us as Patty continued to fail.
As a parent going through all of this, Healing Hearts has been a godsend. Most people think after the first year, you start to move on with your life and things get easier, but this is far from the truth. And I learned at Healing Hearts, for most people, the third year was the most difficult year because things do not get easier. You do not get over it, and it's a pain that you learn to live with. It becomes your new normal and a new way that you live your life every day.
Emotionally, you're completely drained on a daily basis, and again, you have no point of reference on how to handle that. But yet the staff seems to be very keen to the fact that you're not yourself one day to the next, and they provide a lot of distractions, whether it's, hey, do you want a macaroon, or make you a special type of a meal, or go outside for a walk, or take a drive. They make suggestions that almost make it seem like it's your idea.
Ed, the social worker, I thought that in the beginning of the journey of being part of hospice, that he was just there for paperwork, and he became more family than anything. Ed became my go-to person no matter what time of the day that I needed him, whether it was text or phone call. He would be there always to answer any of my questions or to even talk to me. Last week I was in school and I sat in the bathroom for about 20 minutes crying, and he was the first person that I called.
And they said, well, what would you like for dinner? And she said, I really would like tacos. Well, I assumed that they would say, well, we don't have tacos, but the aide, if you will, or the volunteer, went into the kitchen, spoke to the chef, who I believe his name was John, and John got in his car and drove to the store and bought taco shells for my wife, which to me, it may not seem like much, it's tacos, but the fact that they cared enough to go do that because they made her so happy. In her mind, it was like she was in a restaurant and she ordered what she wanted, and for a couple of minutes, she felt like everything was okay. And it put a smile on her face, and it was a great moment, it really was.
Her fashion show, when they put it on, there were so many people involved, and the day she went to do it, she got to meet so many people, but she never really got to know that so many people were behind the scenes trying to do things to help her and support her, which we always appreciated and thought so much of, and that's what meant so much to us because some of those things I think were more beneficial than the actual medical care, because she's been doing medical all her life, but it showed how many people truly cared and were supportive and there to make her life the best it could be.
All this craziness and everything, I mean, you know, with everything that goes on after such a loss, you feel like your life is completely falling apart and there's no place to go and nobody who understands you. Healing Hearts is there and they understand you, and they make you realize it's okay and you're going to be okay.
As odd as it sounds, who says they love hospice? I love Regional Hospice. Everyone is just so loving and compassionate. Attention to detail. There was one time where H had an emergency at home and we were on our way here. And he had been here before, and as soon as we got here, the nurses had his room set up and they already said that his dinner was made and prepared in the refrigerator. They already knew that he liked his steak with mashed potatoes and asparagus. And the fact that they knew him and thought of him being hungry later on and had his meal and snacks set up was just something that really stood out to me. It meant a lot. It meant that they cared. It meant that they just, it's kind of like when you go home and you bring your kid a surprise and they have that excitement that my mom thought of me while she was outside. That's how I felt with them here.
I came back several months after Patty had passed away to thank everyone here. And one of the aides, as soon as they saw me coming in, they brought me a half a dozen macaroons. And I thought it brought a smile to my face because it really tempered my coming back to a place that frankly I didn't want to ever have to come back to. And so I guess the point I'm making is that the caring never really stopped. I'm a year down the road now and I'm still getting phone calls and I look forward to them because it's my connection and a point of reference that I know that things are getting better, and I feel like Regional Hospice and palliative care has been a big part of that.
So one of the most important things for me as a CEO and a former caregiver when I think about really good hospice care is that we as caregivers get the privilege of being allowed into someone's home or assisted living or here in the center to care for them. But the experience of losing a loved one is one that you'll never forget. And it's so important that it be a beautiful experience and that the person is allowed the opportunity to share what their life has been like, have closure to issues that they've never had, family supported in a way that is unconditional, and that the death is not in vain, and that the person's life can be remembered and honored in a way that is really quite beautiful. And that to me is what really good hospice care is all about.